welcome. My name is Jasmine Kamboj, and I'm a medical oncologist and hematologist in the states of Minnesota and Wisconsin, and your host for today. Empowering Oncologists is a podcast brought to you by OncoDaily, where we will focus on day-to-day concerns of an oncologist's being and workflow with a vision to find sustainable solutions. We hope to share our stories of wins, losses, resilience, and inspire and empower our community because we fly higher and longer when we fly together. Before we dive in, a disclaimer. The views shared on this podcast are an individual's and in no way are contributions from any institution, organization, or guidelines. For our session today, we have Dr. Suzanne Cole, who is an associate professor in the Division of Hematology Oncology at UT Southwestern Simmons Comprehensive Cancer Center, where she specializes in GU malignancies and serves as the medical director of community oncology, rural and underrepresented minority research, called CORA. Passionate about expanding access to clinical trials, she focuses on increasing enrollment opportunities for rural and diverse populations, ensuring that research reflects the experiences of an average cancer patient. Dr. Cole obtained her medical degree and finished residency in internal medicine from UT Southwestern, and then pursued hematology oncology fellowship at MD Anderson Cancer Center. For 8 years, she cared for patients in rural West Virginia and Oklahoma. In 2018, she became medical director of the UT Southwestern Richardson Plano Cancer Center, where she successfully developed and launched a community-based clinical trial program serving northern Texas patients. On a personal front, she loves to travel with her family and is big on fitness and wellness activities like weightlifting and yoga. She is my personal favorite unsaid mentor and friend. Suzanne, thank you and welcome for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for that wonderful welcome. I'm excited to talk today. I think we've got a lot that we can talk about and maybe brainstorm together on.
Absolutely. So, Suzanne, you are a fellow from MD Anderson Cancer Center. Not many fellows from MD Anderson would try to go to West Virginia and Oklahoma to serve rural or community clinics. What made you decide to go there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I saw that for myself either. When I first went to MD Anderson, I really thought that I was going to be a bone marrow transplant physician. And I spent my first year in the stem cell transplant world doing the clinic. And then also we have a pretty heavy inpatient first year with a lot of admitted cancer patients who are, either with leukemia or going through transplant. And at that time, I was in kind of the 2000s when I was doing my fellowship. We did not have very good graft versus host disease treatment. And I think that first year I saw a lot of people dying of leukemia, and I saw a lot of people dying of graft versus host disease. And I kind of got to the end of that first year and I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this for my whole career. It just seemed so heavy. And I wasn't in enough outpatient clinic to see the survivors, to really kind of pull me through that. And so I changed my mind and I really didn't love anything enough to say, oh, I want to be a breast cancer doctor now, or, subspecialize in some other, type of cancer that I just didn't have a great, passion for. And so I kind of made this not very common decision in a very academic place like that to become a generalist because I was like, I think I would be very happy doing general clinical oncology, benign hematology. And, I thought maybe I'll go back to Dallas because that's where my family is. But when I was finishing my fellowship was during that 2008 economic crash that really affected the entire United States. And so there were not very many openings or job opportunities in Dallas for me to go back home. And when I realized that that wasn't going to happen for me, I was just like, well, I'm not really tied to anywhere else in the US. I just want to find a really good group and a great job. And I'd be, happy to go somewhere where I feel like it's a good fit for me. So I had done a lot of my training at UT Southwestern. Parkland Hospital is like a huge county hospital that takes care of the indigent of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so I was kind of like looking for a place similar to that had all of the subspecialties, had all of the things that you need, like IR, cardiovascular surgery, like whatever you needed to take care of your cancer patient, that it was a big hospital system. And I started looking around, and I, honestly, the West Virginia job was probably like plan E or F or G, like it was very low on the list. But I went out there to interview, and my partners were like so just warm and welcoming. And of course, like in West Virginia, it's very difficult for them to recruit or retain physicians. And so, of course, they really wanted me to come. I felt the love. And I really loved that it was the Charleston Area Medical Center health system is this huge safety net hospital for the entire southern part of the state. There were 9 oncologists that would be my colleagues. And so I wouldn't be alone, going into practice. And they had a clinical trial program. So having access to clinical trials in the community is actually pretty unusual. And I was like, let's try it. And then, of course, because it's West Virginia, they had these huge incentives to help me pay off my $250,000 of debt that I had come out of training with. And as you know, I have an older son who was 15 when I graduated from fellowship. And so he was about to go to college. And so the finance piece also was a big deal for me. Like I needed to get my financial situation squared away so that I could actually send him to college in a pretty short time. And so this was the job opportunity that like really fit for me.
It's really an interesting and inspiring story because for our fellows to know, like, just like when you go to an institution like MD Anderson, they don't have to feel like they're restricted in their options. They can, they can seriously go to rural and community settings as well. And also, when we go for an interview, we look at these like, bullet points, but actually, ultimately, what also matters a lot is all these soft points. Like, are my colleagues welcoming? Are they, like the love and the warmth, as you said, is also very important. And the family piece, like here, it mattered a lot to you because of your kid. And so we cannot deny that when we are making our career choices and transitioning from fellowship out, we have to put all these factors into account. Very, very nice and inspiring.
Well, and I think as women, we often have a lot of family context that we have to take into account. Our spouses, our kids, where our families are, and I feel really like very lucky that I have married someone who is not in medicine, which is kind of great. Super normal person who could talk about other things besides just medicine. But he was also like very supportive of my career and willing to kind of take this leap. Like he'd never lived outside of Texas. And, we went together with my oldest son, and then we had 2 babies by that point. So there were three kids all moving to West Virginia. But I just loved that job. That was the best job coming out of fellowship. I loved that I was totally serving my community. You could feel that. You could feel your impact like directly on the city that you lived in. It's a pretty small place, about 300,000 people live there. I would run into my patients at the grocery store and, walking down the sidewalk and stuff. And it was just a great place to like become an oncologist and kind of learn how to be who you want to be going forward.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's so rewarding to start at those small little places. Rewarding. Wonderful. So Suzanne, in 2018, you received the NCORE Silver Physician Award for outstanding contributions to clinical trial enrollment. Tell us about that and how did you manage to get that serving in a rural and community setting?
So, I mean, I think that I'm pretty sure that people who come from like really hardcore academic places, but then go into practice, go out into the non-academic spaces and are taking care of patients, you still have a little bit of craving of connection, of like some academic layer to what you're doing. And so I really sought that out by participating in SWOG and ECOG, the cooperative group trial, the cooperative groups who create the public trials that are funded through the NIH that a lot of community NCORE sites have access to. And so my first job, we were an affiliate of West Virginia University. And then my second job in Oklahoma was an NCORE site. And so having kind of gotten connected to the clinical trial groups was really very helpful to me to kind of satisfy that need of doing something beyond the day-to-day of seeing patients.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but like I am profoundly unsatisfied with the fact that many of my patients are still dying very soon from many different kinds of cancer that have not been fixed, right? And so like we have so far to go in making things better for them that being part of the process of like finding new treatments, giving access to new treatments to patients that are, normal run-of-the-mill people that maybe can't make it to the academic places. That was kind of like a mission for me that made me feel like I was doing my part, even though I wasn't in academia.
Right. And that's a really good point, because as we strive to get into community settings, we must not forget that there's a lot of opportunity for trials and research in community as well. And again, at the time of job search, if you can look up what are the NCORE sites in a particular region, that could be a really good way to look at a job if you're interested and passionate about research like you were.
When I was looking for my job, when I was leaving West Virginia and I was trying to get back towards Texas. And I had this criteria because I had been in this practice that had a very robust clinical trial program that was working, and so I was like, I need to find a place that has this intact and is already happening and not something that I would have to start by myself. And so that's how I ended up in Oklahoma, just a short distance from Texas, because that was the right fit for me.
Wonderful. That was actually my next question. Like, how did you end up going back to UT Southwestern? So you already answered that. Wonderful. Suzanne, tell us a little bit about the challenges of being a medical director of the quorum research at UT Southwestern. How do you navigate this? Because it seems like it's a huge endeavor and you are successfully running this program. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think part of it is if you are really passionate about something, you will make it happen. It's easier to be engaged in something that you really, really care about. And when I came to UT Southwestern, we had an amazing research program in the Dallas main campus, but really none of the therapeutic clinical trials were happening in the regional sites. So we had to really work hard to put infrastructure in all of the clinics that were outside of the mothership, like pharmacy equipment, something to spin down the blood that you have to send off for PKs, all of that stuff. We had to kind of get support to obtain that, and then set it up and get it there. And then we also had to kind of overcome some barriers with the Dallas campus, just kind of being like, I don't think we can run this trial out where you are. You guys are not, colon cancer specialists. I don't think you're going to be able to navigate this trial. And I'm like, hey, listen, I totally have done this before. I am ready to do this. Like, trust me, give me a chance. And let me just put some patients on your study that are not willing to drive all that distance to get onto the trial. And so slowly over time, we started to just gain traction where we were putting up really high accrual numbers because, as you know, when you are in the community, you see patients every single day. And the variety of patients is all over the place. And so we were accruing to all kinds of different tumor types. And it took several years to really get to where we were like killing it with our accruals. But over time of just, really cultivating the culture, getting everybody on board, working with the people in Dallas to allow us to have access to their studies and collaborate with us. After a few episodes of like our little clinic put 10 patients on this study, that's a lot of patients. And then people started to go like, how do I get my studies up there? Because there's all these patients up here. So that was part of it. It was just kind of being persistent, being positive, educating people, but then also showing your work and being excellent and making it kind of following through on this idea of not only can we set things up to have a research program in a community site, but we can accrue like crazy. And I think once people started to see that that was what was happening, everybody was on board. And we have like so many resources now because the entire UT Southwestern system is like, wow, how do we make this happen in our new community site that we're going to be opening next year? You know, they're already thinking about what makes the UT Southwestern clinics that are out in the community special is that they do have access to this research option. You know, and a lot of patients want to get their treatment, they want to get their treatment close to home.
Right. I'm going to unpack a couple of things that you just said. So you said therapeutic clinical trials. Explain to me what that means and explain to me how did you launch your pharmacy in those settings? Because that's very key because some of the institutions may just want to say, okay, we have community trials, but they may not be therapeutic or interventional. So please explain to me what that means.
Okay, so therapeutic clinical trials are having access to drugs that actually help treat your cancer. There are lots of non-therapeutic clinical trials that are, you know, maybe drawing a blood sample to do a correlate, or maybe you're participating in a survey. But you're not getting cancer treatment that might be better than the current standard of care. So, you know, patients are not interested in doing things that don't benefit them. You know, some people are super altruistic and will, you know, give you an extra blood sample, et cetera. But what they're really interested in is how do I not die? And what kinds of options are the best things that I should be doing right now? And so I think most of our patients really wanted to have access to real clinical trials that had, you know, therapy that could change their lives and make their cancer better. And when I first came to UT Southwestern, we had a clinic out in Fort Worth that had a lot of non-therapeutic trials open, and they were accruing very well to that. But it wasn't hey, there's this new drug, here it is, you know, we're all learning how to give it to you, that kind of thing. And then, you know, I have to say that like I have not navigated by myself the very heavy lift that it is to put the infrastructure in place. My first 2 community jobs, those places were already up and running, therapeutic trials. When I came to Richardson, we had to like get things like the separate refrigerator and freezer and space for storing the medications that are not trial medications are separated from the standard of care treatments. But my institution was totally on board. And so I had all of these people who were very knowledgeable about, well, this is how we set it up in Dallas. This is how we can set it up here. And then the money also came from our administration because they value this. And you have to have that buy-in from your organization because it's so expensive to get the infrastructure in place.
Right. So, yeah. So that I really wanted to highlight that because a lot of us in the community, we will open trials, but they're not necessarily clinically meaningful trials. They're just to fill in the NCI paperwork, you know. So what you're doing is truly meaningful. Thank you. My next question to you, Suzanne, is you are a fellow of ASCO and ACP. Tell us, how did you end up doing all of that despite being so busy with community and rural oncology and establishing a strong clinical trial network?
Yeah, I think that the motivation there was, you know, trying to maintain some type of connection. It can be really lonely in the community, especially like even if you have a few partners, they may be the only people that do cancer, you know, in your whole hospital. And it's really, I think, just from a human perspective, nice to stay connected to your society because there's so much education that they offer. There's so much camaraderie. When I first came out of my training, I would go to probably like 3 or 4 different kinds of meetings a year, just educational, because I wanted to like meet other people and see what was going on and make sure that I was keeping up. And I learned very well in those types of settings. And so I got really involved in ASCO because my senior partner in West Virginia was very heavily involved himself. And so he basically like opened the door and put my name on a list of like, be the community oncologist representative for the development of palliative care guidelines. This was back in the day,
Yeah.
And so I went to ASCO and attended one of those guideline building sessions as a community oncologist. And I met a bunch of people and I was like, this is great. Like, how do I stay connected to this? Because it was just very like personally meaningful to me. And I realized when I was in that room that I had insights about how things run in the community that a lot of people that make these rules have no idea what we're talking about, or the challenges or just nuances of taking care of people that are not self-selecting to go to these academic places. So I felt like I actually had something to bring to the table that would be helpful to my patient population, and hopefully impact and help other oncologists. And so it was really out of a like kind of a selfish, like, I love this connection. But also it was just very gratifying. It kind of gave me this personal gratification of being part of something bigger.
Right.
So that's where it started. And then, with ASCO, it's kind of like if you just say yes to everything they ask you to do, you'll eventually get your fellowship through the point system. And that's some advice that I have to people, is that like, you're not necessarily a known entity, right? Like, I ended up really focusing on GU oncology once I got into the community setting. But if I wanted to be like on the GU committee, that's actually never happened for me. Like I just would say yes to whatever they needed. And whether that was being part of the taxonomy committee or, just whatever I was asked to do at ASCO, I would always say yes and just take that opportunity. And it was really great because I met just tons of people from all over the country. And I learned a lot about just how the organization works and helps people.
That's a really strong key takeaway for our fellows and early career oncologists. Like, if ASCO asks you to do something, just do it. No questions asked.
If you want to, like, if you are interested in that,
Right.
I don't think it's a good idea to do stuff that you're not engaged with, like,
Right.
there are a lot of people that want to do things for ASCO and are not invited. And then it like kind of always irks me when somebody's supposed to be on a committee and then they never come. I'm like, come on, man, you could have given your spot to somebody else.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a point well taken. So tell me a little bit about physician coaching, Suzanne. We are all talking a lot about physician well-being. A lot of us feel, even if somebody's not feeling necessarily burned out, we are still feeling like there's a lack of fulfillment. There's a lack of that satisfaction professionally speaking. How have you navigated that, and how has physician coaching helped you?
Yeah. So I think that this really came for a head for me when I came to the position that I'm in now, because this was my first leadership position where, my prior practices, I was kind of part of the team and, like not the person like having to bring down the law or, share ideas from leadership of like, this is what we need you to be doing that you don't want to be doing, or that kind of stuff. And so when I came into leadership, I was pretty angry for the first like year or two about the things that I couldn't change, the things that I felt needed to be fixed, but that I didn't have, the power, or I hadn't been here long enough to have like a network of people who supported me. And so I was a little bit frustrated my first couple of years, and then COVID happened, which was a, very stressful, depressing time, I think, for everyone. And so probably a year into COVID, I did decide to do some coaching because I was like just noticing like how unhappy and upset I was about these leadership things. I like love my patients. I love doing oncology. If I could just do like clinic, I would probably have been fine. But it was this extra layer that kind of brought a lot of anxiety to me. And I think that's probably normal for anybody who steps into leadership and doesn't have like a lot of training, and how to do the leadership piece. So I had done a little bit of leadership training where coaching was, kind of like sort of part of the program, but not anything like very personal or intense. And then I did enroll in a physician coaching program that was probably like an 8-week thing. And during that time, it was a very structured program. There were a lot of other, it was for women oncologists, and there were a lot of other women that were in my cohort. And so you got to hear a lot of different people's perspectives. And then there were many different coaches that would come and do a class or have a private session. And so over the course of that time, I really clicked with somebody who had actually previously worked at my institution and had like a lot of insight about the nuances of this place. And I did some like one-on-one coaching with her for probably about half a year. And it was life-changing for me. I really learned the art of not being so worried about what everybody else is thinking, but just to kind of figure out like what I need to be, whatever I think is what needs to be happening, I need to be okay with that. And if somebody disagrees with me, that is fine. That's okay. And it's not like a personal reflection on me or an attack on me, or I don't feel the need anymore to have everyone think exactly like me, which I think I struggled with at the beginning.
Right. We all do, I think. And again, a lot of great points here, because sometimes we feel like if we are enrolling onto a new job or we're getting onto something big, we think that, oh, this is our aha moment and now my life is going to get really great. But it doesn't happen that way, right? Every position comes with its own challenges, and the higher the position, the higher and bigger and more complex the challenges. So it's very normal and natural to feel how you felt in the first few years. But again, the key takeaway is that, you're a fighter, Suzanne, right? So you didn't give in. You wanted to fight back, and that was your way of doing that. And I think that's very mature and wise.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. One advice that you would give to your self of 10 years ago.
Okay, so 10 years ago, I would have been in West Virginia. And I think that I would say, don't take everything too hard. I think I was a little bit more, like if something bad happened to one of my patients, it would bother me for days. And I would carry a lot of other people's pain inside. And I was definitely not great about taking care of myself. And I think that I've learned to really protect some of that self-care time so that like you're healthy and you're able to be resilient for all of the things that happen to the people you work with and your patients.
Right. Wonderful. Now some fun part of our podcast, a little rapid fire. Your favorite book?
My favorite book is probably Cloud Atlas.
Why is that?
Which is like, it's like multiple stories inside of other stories of a soul that keeps being reborn into other bodies and times. And the first half of the book is the first half of everybody's story. And then the second half is how it ends.
Oh,
each iteration of that soul. And so it's like one of the most interesting, I still think about it.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds very insightful. Yeah, perfect. Favorite leader?
Okay, so my favorite leader is this woman named Michelle Bachelet. She was the president of Chile. She was their first woman president. She was a physician. She actually was a prisoner of Pinochet's regime and was tortured, and her father was killed during that time. And so she's kind of like this resilient person. So she became a physician, came back to Chile, served her country in, kind of their public health system. And she began serving government and trying to help make things better for women in Chile and children. And over time, she kind of rose in popularity and ended up being elected. And now she's, retired from the presidency, but she is very involved in like national or world organizations for just improving societies. So I admire her a lot.
Oh, that's very inspirational. Your favorite study, cancer study?
So probably my favorite cancer study is the enfortumab vedotin pembrolizumab trial that changed things for metastatic bladder cancer patients. And that's probably because we participated in that study and we had a lot of patients go on trial. And I still have like a bunch of people walking around today that would not have been here if they hadn't been on that study.
Oh, that's super rewarding.
Mhm.
Your favorite restaurant in Dallas-Fort Worth area?
So probably this French restaurant that's not too far from my house. It's called Lavando. It's really great. It's this family that came here from France. And when I went to France, I was so spoiled on this restaurant's food that I was a little disappointed. So I think they're pretty great.
That's awesome. We'll have to look that up too. All right. One fun question for you, Suzanne. So you grew up on a horse and cattle farm in rural North Dakota, and you competed in a barrel race. Tell us what that means and tell us about your experience. I've never heard of a barrel race before.
Okay. So you've heard of rodeos. Okay. So as part of the rodeo, one of the events is barrel racing, where you ride a horse as fast as you can towards 3 barrels that are kind of spread out, and you whip your horse around in a very tight circle around these 3 barrels, and then you run out of the arena as fast as possible, and it's the time that allows you to win. And it's mostly reserved for women. It's like the female event. But I just grew up in that culture, and that was part of what we did.
Very cute. Do you have any pictures of that?
I don't have any pictures of the barrel racing, but I have pictures of being a kid on a farm. Yeah.
All right. Last question for Dr. Suzanne Cole. If you were to relive your life, would you become an oncologist?
I think I would be a murder detective. So I think one of the things that I love about medicine is that it's like we have so much detective skills. Like that's part of what we do. So I think that's what I love about medicine. And in medicine, I would never do anything other than oncology. But now I am have watched every single detective show ever made. And I think in my former life, I may have been a problem-solving murder detective. Who knows?
That is super. That is super hilarious. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne, for your time and sharing all your insights. 3 key takeaways for the oncology community from today's episode. When we talk about clinical trials in the community, I personally like to really pay attention to the therapeutic clinical trials versus lifestyle clinical trials or some just observational clinical trials, etc., because that does matter to our patients and to the way we practice. The second key takeaway, I believe, for me is when we venture onto these leadership roles, it's okay to feel overwhelmed in the beginning. It's okay to have those disappointments and frustrations because things may still not go exactly the way we want. In fact, sometimes it increases and amplifies the number of challenges that we get. And like Dr. Cole said, don't take things too hard on yourself. Find time for yourself, for self-care. And do not feel shy if you have to pivot your career based on your likings and your preferences, because ultimately we feel rewarded when we do the thing that we love the most, the best every day. Thank you again to our viewers and listeners. This is Jasmine Kamboj and Dr. Suzanne Cole signing off on behalf of OncoDaily from our conversation on Empowering Oncologists. Thank you.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.